I think we ultimately have to move to a system of individualized accounts, because Fleming versus Nestor said in 1960, Supreme Court decision, that none of us have any legal claim whatsoever to our own Social Security money. And what that means is that the Social Security so-called trust fund has been robbed from for a long while now, and I think that money needs to be protected.
I could not disagree more. I would not be in favor of all of privatizing Social Security. If we had privatized Social Security in 2008 with the huge economic crash that we had since the Great Depression, our elderly would have lost half of their investment. That would have been devastating.
I would respond that just as commercials don't make it so, I would say what you're saying doesn't make it so. And I would say that respectfully in this way. If you actually look, prior to 1983, at the county government level or the state government level, you could in essence create your own Social Security plan. So if you were to go to Brazoria, Matagorda, or Galveston counties down in South Texas, they created their own plans. And they would not let people take direct stock market risk, to your point. They could only go into annuity. And if you look at the actual rate of return for those workers in South Texas, they've done considerably better in terms of rate of return, and the money has been protected and not raided from in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Our next topic is federal spending. Last week, sequester-related furloughs caused major delays in air travel, as we all know. However, Congress voted to offset these cuts to the FAA. How would you have voted, considering there are low-income and military families being impacted by the other aspects of sequestration? Governor Sanford.
I mean, that vote was ultimately a vote about flexibility within the Federal Transportation Authority. I mean, what was wrong with what happened with TSA is a 4% cut led to impacting 40% of the flights. And there were a whole host of articles around the country talking about, wait a minute, this is in essence bureaucracy gaming the system for maximum impact to try and produce a political result. And so I would absolutely voted for that flexibility that was entailed in that bill.
Mrs. Colbert-Bush, how would you have voted?
I think the sequester was poorly executed, to be perfectly honest. Let's start at the very beginning. When we look at just very basic cost cuts and spending, look at Medicare with $166 billion in waste, fraud, overbilling, and inability to negotiate our pharmaceuticals. The sequester was $85 billion. When we're talking about getting our fiscal house in order, we need to look at everything from cutting spending to what are our costs. So during the time when we're having all this fiscal spending, fiscal cutting, and back to the days where everybody had a furlough in the state, everybody was losing their jobs, and we were pulling our belts in, when we talk about fiscal spending and we talk about protecting the taxpayers, it doesn't mean you take that money we saved and leave the country for a personal purpose.
Everybody needs a little bit.
She went there, Governor Sanford.
I couldn't hear what she said. Repeat it. I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Answer the question.
What was the question? Okay, but anyway, on the sequester, I mean, I'll go back to sequester. Here's the problem with sequester, which is, I think it's a real problem to not be specific on spending cuts, because all the people supporting you, those 37 members of Congress, consistently fought against me when I tried to infuse spending discipline in Washington, D.C. I mean, with all due respect to Nancy Pelosi, whose name I will raise again, but she is. She's spending $370,000 right here in the 1st Congressional District. With all due respect to her and others, they have not pushed for financial discipline in Washington, D.C. So to disavow the $1 million that's come in support of your candidacy from people who have pushed for more spending in Washington, D.C., to me doesn't make great sense.
When we're looking at fiscal responsibility, and I have been very specific about some items that I would do to help cut the spending, and one of them would be the duplicative services that we have. There's $150 billion in duplicative services. Let me give you an example. 3,100 data centers for 12 agencies. That's completely unnecessary. We have to look at cutting these costs and getting cost efficiencies. So I have been very specific.
Thank you.
Mrs. Colbert-Bush, the next topic is education. The performance of America's students in grades K through 12 trails that of most other industrialized countries. Do you think what is needed is a change in the approach to funding or fundamental reform to the way our children are taught?
I'm a very proud parent